Oh hi, Taryn here with Elegant Upgrades. So if you'd like to see what we did, keep on watching.
Welcome to this week's piece. So this is what we started with. Now, when I originally saw the pictures of this to go pick it up, they clearly did not put the picture of the side in, or the fact that one of the casters was completely missing a wheel, or that it was missing an entire lower section of drawer. But that's fine, because we fix things. I was trying to take the drawers out, the knobs just kept popping off. I mean, it was in a state. So, we're gonna fix her up, and all will be right with the world. Of course, I made all appropriate repairs, did a ton of wood filling, and now we're going to give this entire piece a good scuff sand and get it prepped for paint. Now, as I was going along, of course, I found something else to fix. So there's just this kind of weird crack in the wood here in the drawer. So I'm taking some of my sanding dust from my sander from the top. So it's the same wood. I add just a teeny tiny bit of glue, and then I'll fill that gap in with that because it's not going to need to be clamped back in. It just needs to be kind of filled. And I want it to be the same wood that was already there. Now we're busting out the bag of tricks. Just kidding. This is just a surplus of what I had from when I did the ethereal dresser piece. I'll put a little link somewhere if you want to see how I did that one, but I had tons of these extra, and I'm so thankful for that now because it was very upsetting at the time having so many of these, but now it's kind of nice just to be able to pull them out and throw them on a piece when I need it. So I just worked out an arrangement with a lot of these molds that I already had and glued them on. Of course, while it's on its back, waiting for all of those to dry, it's the perfect time to put on these new casters. So these are just ones I found on Amazon. I love them. I feel like they still have kind of an antique vibe to them, but they're much sturdier than the little wooden wheels, and these are going to last quite a bit longer, so it's good. Now, if I didn't have molds on this piece, I probably wouldn't have bothered to prime it because the paint in itself would have worked as a decent primer. It wouldn't have had adhesion issues, and there wouldn't have been any bleed through. But since I did the moldings, I don't like paint directly over those without a primer because I find that it doesn't adhere right, so we are now priming the entire piece because of that. Now for the top, I ended up going in with this Varathane. It's like a light gray stain. I thought it would help because like I said, I could still see some of the staining and everything even with 2 coats of oxalic acid. So I wanted the top natural, but I need something to kind of help me hide things. I didn't want a dark color, so I tried this out. It was fine, but not exactly what I wanted, so there'll be more to come later. Now I am going to seal over this with poly just because it's going to create a protective barrier between the next step. And I'm also including this with the poly here. My shop this day was extremely cold and my poly was too thick. So you'll see it going on thick and weird, and I should have just known better and thinned it out before I started working, but I didn't. Sometimes I just like to fight with myself for no apparent reason. So I'm just showing you this. You don't have to worry about it. It will be totally fine. It looks all kinds of crazy. I'm just going to smooth out any of the heavier sections and then just not overwork it because that's where you're going to run into issues. But it's just going to look crazy for a bit, but don't worry. It'll dry down just fine, and then you can go back and give it a light sand, which I do between all of my poly coats anyways. Now for the second coat, I obviously wizened up and thinned out my poly, and then it went on much nicer. Now we can head back to the body, and since I don't know what I'm doing with the entire piece, I do know that I'm putting decoupage on the front of this section, so I'm just going to add in some white to pop the decoupage paper just a little bit more. And so this was the winner of the post that I did. You guys, thank you so much for voting and I was struggling so hard with this, and it even was hard to break it down to those 3 images that I chose. So I'm so grateful to you. I hope you know that. So I just do a rough cut on this to get it fit in, and then I can just rip off any areas around the moldings that I want. I'm never worried about this being perfect because I painted my decoupage papers, so it all gets covered up in the end. Now this is a print that I do at home off my computer. You can order from Zazzle or something like that if you want to have a company print them. It will be on much thicker paper. This is like the thinnest tissue paper possible. I like it because I feel like you can't see it in the end result, but it's not terribly easy to work with. So there's always give and take with every kind of medium you use. Now for me, the easiest way to do this one, and honestly it changes with every piece depending on what I'm doing, but I just did a strip along the top of the poly. I use my Satin Poly, that's how I adhere it. I just do a strip along the top, and then I can add it along the bottom, and you can see me working with the paper as I go, and once it's wet with the poly, I can kind of use that to help it rip just a little more easily as I go, and then I'm just making little snips with the scissors and getting like a tear started, and then I will work it around the piece that way, and that's just how I'm going to attach the whole thing. And then once it dries, I can then go in with a blade and cut between the drawers, and then I will re-poly it over the top of that so that there's no lifting edges. Now, since I want this to have kind of a watercolor feel, I'm going to go over the entire piece in Devonshire Cream, which is just a very lovely creamy white color. And this is going to help give the watercolor illusion because it's lightening up all the colors. So I chose a few colors from the print itself that I thought went well, and then you'll see they go on really, really bright, but then as you blend them together, they will start kind of having that moody, swirly, watercolory feel to them because you have the white underneath. And then each color has a brush, and then I will also have a clean blending brush that I will use to swirl them together. As you can see, I do not care about colors mixing together. I think that makes it look better in this type of blend. There's so many different kinds of blends. You kind of learn the ones that you like best, and sometimes it just varies piece to piece. But you can see I just kind of put the colors next to the image where I want that color to shine through a little more than others, and I will just keep blending around the piece. I almost always do these little swirly motions just to get everything fully together. I go over the paper, and then the paper has been sealed with poly because that's how we applied it. So if you get any on the paper that you don't want, you can always take a damp cloth and wipe it back, and you're just fine, and it doesn't have any adverse effects. And you can see that I'm kind of doing just the border around there. I'm not worried about it drying out too much. I want to work quickly so that I can get it before it dries out all the way, but you can always just add water and spray it and get it going. Once I have the whole front done, I'm going to pull out the drawers and then I can see what I need to do about the colors on the inner drawers. I try to get them matched up decently well. I don't care if it's perfect, but I don't want it to be just crazy when you open the drawers and it just looks totally different. So I will go back and forth with the colors, blend them out, and just have it be more of a cohesive thing when you open the drawers. Just to add another layer to this piece, because I feel like it needs it, I'm going to dry brush over the entire thing. So this is going to really actually make those distressed points in the dresser stand out even more. So again, this is not a super clean finish. This is meant to be very old, cottagey, in that kind of realm. So that's what I want to do, and it's going to make the details pop a little more and just kind of make it look a little more lived in. Now, same with the top, I'm using the exact same color and I'm dry brushing over the gray stain. Anywhere that you go a little too heavy-handed, you can take a kind of a damp cloth and wipe it back, and you just keep going until you get something that you like. It's kind of a process and you want to build it up as you go. I sealed everything in on the body with just some Satin Poly. And then I went through and added this hardware. So I wanted the hardware to be quite a bit darker because the piece overall was just very, very light. However, these were just a little bit too dark, so I'm taking my gold and I'm hitting those, and it will tone them down just a little and also make them match the casters that we already have on. And then also I'm going to throw gold on all of the appliques so that those pop as well. And then on the top, I don't know. I kept going back and forth with things. So this is where we're at now. I decided to throw these stencils on the four corners. And then on top of that, because I still wanted the top to have the watercolory feel as the base, I did just a very light blue-gray, and I did it a really, really wet wash over the top of the white dry brushing and over the top of the stencils so that the stencils wouldn't stand out too much. And then while I waited for that to dry, I went in with some gold gilded stripes on the sides. And if you want clean stripes, this is not the way to do it. You'll want to use a liquid and you'll want to use tape. But because this is kind of a grungy finish anyways, I did the gold gilding wax with a stencil of stripes. And then anywhere that you have extra gilding wax that you didn't want on there, see, like it gets a little bit messy, you can just take some clear wax and a rag and it will wipe it back. And you can totally get rid of it that way. If it's been sitting for a while, you'll need a little bit more of a scrub, but it works. Just give it some time. A little bit of elbow grease, or finger grease if you will. And of course, any areas that I missed, I'll just use a little detail brush and fill those out. And back to the top, now that that's dry, I'm going to seal it with white wax. And that is just going to add to kind of the watery look. And I think this will be where I end the top. It went on a journey, but I like where it ended up, so we're good.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed this. It was such a process. This thing was just, falling apart essentially is where we started. So I'm really pleased that we got to put her back together and just really embrace the charm of these old little dainty dressers. I just think they're so, so sweet. And they're some of my favorite pieces to do. I feel like they fit into tons of people's spaces. You can get them into quite a few vehicles, so they're good in that regard, because a lot of times that's a hindrance for someone to be able to come pick something up. But these fit in a hatchback pretty well. So I've seen some people work some magic in their cars. Thanks so much. I'll get you guys some photos, and I will see you next week.